Jersey Joe on the radio. Colonel Daniel Davis is a senior fellow for defense priorities and a retired lieutenant colonel in the United States Army. He retired in 2015 after 21 years, including 4 combat deployments, 2 of which were in Afghanistan. Colonel, thank you for your service to the United States. Great to have you on the show, sir.
Well, thank you very much. It's always a pleasure to be here.
Well, here we go. Dan Coates, he's director of Intel. He did a whole intelligence assessment yesterday. What was your take on all of this, Colonel?
Well, the intelligence community is just the way that they're typically put together, or their mentality is that they're gonna I won't say they'll hype all the threats, but they're certainly gonna highlight them so that they'll say, hey, here's all the things you have to be concerned about. So just on the surface of it, if they say something, you can't automatically go, okay, well, gosh, we have to take action on this or that. Because we've certainly seen many times in the past where the intelligence community has been really wrong about things, not the worst of which was 2003 in Iraq with the WMD. That being said, however, you certainly can't just discount what they say. And there's a number of things that was in that in his testimony, I think, which is something we should be concerned about. But I think the biggest thing that we have to be careful of is not going so far as to say, okay, well, because he says that ISIS still remains a threat, that we have to remain in Syria forever, because there's the whole cause and effect issue. Yes, ISIS exists in Syria. That's beyond question. They're going to continue to live in Syria because they're basically an insurgent force, just like al-Qaeda in Iraq were during and after the surge period, because you can defeat armies. And when ISIS had territory in Iraq and Syria, it was easy for us to go in there, relatively speaking, to take terrain and to take physical cities, because that's what we're designed to do. But once they meld back into the population, now then it becomes a nearly impossible task, as we have seen in both Iraq and currently in Afghanistan, because you just can't, you don't even know who they are. So you can't just say, all right, we're going to stay until we defeat them.
Hey, Colonel, some of the president's critics are trying to characterize this as American intelligence agencies disputing President Trump on his analysis of the global threat assessment, But I got to tell you, though, the president is just like, he's got to be positive. He's got to say, look, we took down this ISIS, this horrible terror group, and now they just have pretty much a square mile, and the president has done a stellar job in taking them out. Do you agree, sir?
Yeah, you have to. The intelligence assessment can say that there is a threat that exists from them, but then the president has to say, well, what do our assets, what do our the means that we have to get the ends taken care of, which is the ends of taking care of protecting the United States. And if a handful of troops, and that's all 2,000 are in this 20,000 square mile section of Syria, they are not going to keep us safe over here by having us over there. All they're going to do is take enormous strategic risk. And as we saw tragically about 10 days ago, 4 of our American citizens were killed over there, and for no value, no gain. So the president is absolutely right to pull us out, because we don't keep us safer by those deployments.
I'm looking at your resume. My goodness gracious. A true American hero you are, Colonel Davis. And let me start with Afghanistan. You served admirably there and received one of your bronze medals for your service there. There's speculation that we may be close to a deal. How do you trust the Taliban, Colonel Davis? I mean, do we just pull out of Afghanistan, let it go just like that?
Well, not just like that, but if we say we're going to predicate our withdrawal on having a stable situation in there, then you are guaranteeing we will never leave. And the fact is that just as I adamantly said in 2012 when I came back from my second deployment there, the situation cannot be won militarily. It is not in America's interest to permanently engage in a war over there, and it's a literal permanent war at the moment, because there's not even the end state described. So there's no militarily achievable objective right now other than to just conduct combat operations on a daily basis. So because of that, what we need to do is withdraw the combat troops from there. We can still continue to help out diplomatically, humanitarian. We'll offer assistance in anti-corruption measures, et cetera. But our troops on there will never succeed there. And why should we continue to sacrifice troops in something that can't be won? And so the result is probably going to be chaos and more difficulties. But it's been difficult. It's been violent since 1979. It's consistent, never broken string. Basically, in 2001, we interrupted a civil war that was going on over there, and it's really not stopped since. So we just have to accept that military force is not going to end this diplomatic and political problem that's going on in Afghanistan.
It's okay to leave a safe haven for groups like Al-Qaeda?
No, that's one of the biggest myths there are. That implies that there's not a safe haven there because of our troops there. There is no such thing as, and never has been, even when we had 140,000 NATO troops there, we were not able to prevent Afghanistan from being used as a safe haven. What we do have to do, though, is we have to defend American interests worldwide, no matter where they come, whether Afghanistan, Syria, Libya, Pakistan, et cetera, where we don't have troops in most of those places. And that is by our global intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance effort and an aggressive cooperation between federal and local law enforcement agencies. And that does succeed, and that's where we need to put our emphasis because we can't put troops everywhere.
Yeah, no, understood, Colonel. Colonel Daniel Davis with Joe Piscopo at 8:43 in the morning. We appreciate your time, sir. Tell us about Syria. And I go back and forth with our producer, Frankie Five Burrows, and we got to get out of Syria. We got to get out of Syria. In my mind, and I may be a bit hawkish, Colonel, because my father fought in the Second World War, so I feel like we need a presence there, you know. And once we pull out of Syria, doesn't that leave a big vacuum there? Because now Vladimir Putin steps in. Now Iran steps in. And that's not too far from Israel, you know, and Assad himself. I mean, shouldn't we leave some troops there, or are you thinking along the lines of let's just get out of there? Just to what you were saying, there's no way we can win.
Well, I mean, there's a couple of really big points to bring up there. Number one is if you're going to have American combat troops stationed within the territory of a sovereign nation that has not invited us in there, then we have to have congressional authorization. I mean, that's just the way our Constitution was written, that the executive can't just decide where they want to put combat troops. They have to have authorization, which we don't have. But the second thing we have to consider is that there really is no void or vacuum to create, because prior to 2011, before this civil war broke out, both Iran and Russia have been for decades their allies. They've always been there. They were there before. They're there now. They'll be there afterwards because they have enduring interest and they have an alliance between them. So we don't create anything by leaving. All we do is we lessen our own strategic risk to our soldiers. So we actually don't cost anything by leaving out because we're not gaining anything by their presence right now.
Yeah. How do you analyze the situation in Venezuela, sir?
Yeah, that's one thing I really wish that we would start to learn some lessons, that we can't from the outside tell another country what they're going to do and try to fix their political situation within their borders, because as much as we hate what Maduro's doing, and it's unequivocally a horrible human being, he's devastated his country, but to even threaten to use military force to set something right, or to use economic sanctions to cause even more suffering to the 30 million people over there, which are already unbelievable suffering, it just doesn't help. I think that we should recognize that is first and foremost a humanitarian crisis and a domestic political crisis, and we can certainly help, with relieving the suffering and help with relief supplies. We can even do that and guide or help with our other regional friends in that region. But to say we're going to force an end of Maduro, that's something the Venezuelan people have to figure out on their own. And for us to try to impose a resolution from the outside is just almost guaranteed to make things worse and definitely not reach an outcome that's beneficial to our country.
And the National Security Advisor, John Bolton's notepad the other day, you saw that press conference, it said,
right.
Did you see that 5,000 troops to Colombia, And we know Ambassador Bolton, and he's been on the show many, many times. So I that had to be a concerted effort. What do you think that's a reference to?
Yeah, Bolton doesn't do anything, by happenstance. I don't think he would be so careless as to do that.
That's right. Yeah,
unintentionally. Yeah. He must have had some intent to send a message to somebody, but that's just a message we don't really want to be sending, because sending any more American troops anywhere over there, you just can't use American combat troops to try to attain political outcomes. It just doesn't work.
Yeah, well, you've been there, Colonel. We appreciate your time, sir. And so before we let you go, see, I worry about And this is, again, forgive me my hawkish stance here, sir, and you know better than anybody because you've been in the heat of battle. And no, we thank you for your stellar and valor service. But it's like, if you don't take care of it there, doesn't it come here? Am I wrong in that assessment?
Yeah, that's because Bush has almost made that into a gospel statement back in 2003, 2004, and especially when the insurgency first sprang up in Iraq. But the fact is, it doesn't. Our troops there don't do anything to keep us safe here. When you look at, there was a great analysis by the Heritage Foundation released in 2013 that it looked at the 60 terrorist plots that had been either planned or attempted in the United States. There were 60 of them up to 2013 after 9/11. And 56 of them had been interdicted. Not one of them was interdicted and stopped because we had troops somewhere overseas. 100% of them were due to good cooperation between our local and federal law enforcement agencies and aggressive international intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance efforts. So we identify the threats no matter where they come from. Because, you got to recognize, it's not just Iraq, Syria, and Libya, and a couple of other places we have a few troops, like in Somalia. But there's literally dozens of places around the globe where terrorist people are plotting and would like to do something, and we have to defend against all of them. Yeah. So that's why it's our domestic defense is what really is going to keep us safe and does keep us safe.
Hey, what are we doing in Somalia, by the way, now that you mention it? Can I ask you that? What's going on with Somalia?
Right.
When does that stop? When does that end over there, huh?
Exactly. That's the point. It doesn't. It will never end because in just like almost every other situation we just mentioned here, there's no attainable military objective even given, i.e., like if I'm in a tank company, like I was in Desert Storm, our objective was to move to this location, destroy this enemy formation, which we did, mission accomplished. Okay, now we're good to go. There's nothing like that now, so that you even know what winning looks like. You don't even know what success looks like. So the only thing you do is you just give them tactical activities. Go on this raid right here, go on a patrol over there. And so it's just accomplished per se, but it doesn't accomplish anything on a strategic value for the United States, so that will never end. And until we finally just accept that and bring them home so that we can prepare for potentially existential fights we may one day have with Russia or China. So you have to worry about going and destroying a tank company. Yeah. That's what we need to put our focus on.
Yeah, great conversation, Colonel. So the president is on the right track when he draws down certain troops in Syria, for example. You think the president is on the right track?
I do, yeah, he is.
All right, Colonel. Thank you so much. Thanks again for your service, man. You're a real hero, Colonel Davis. Please come back soon, because we lay people, that haven't been in the heat of battle, man. We appreciate you giving us the breakdown of it. And again, thank you for being such a stellar American, sir.
Hey, thank you very much. I always love being on your show. Thanks.
Thank you, Colonel. Colonel Daniel Davis, Senior Fellow for Defense Priorities, retired Lieutenant Colonel in the United States Army. He retired in 2015 after 21 years, 4 combat deployments, 2 of which were in Afghanistan. Deb, I don't know, I guess because my daddy in the Second World War, he would tell me all about the skirmishes all around the world and how the United States should deal with them. So I'm fascinated by that. But that Colonel Davis really breaks it down, And it's nice to hear that the president indeed is on the right track, I guess, huh?
I hope so. I really do.